Hey folks, it's John from A is for Alcoholic again. Today's conversation is with Angel Luna. He's a comedian, a magician, a musician, an all-around awesome guy. We got to talk at great lengths about all kinds of stuff, figuring out a way to make it, how to make it sober, how to make it big, how to follow what feels right rather than what you are told is right, and dealing with sobriety and recovery during a pandemic, doing it on your own, asking for help. It was an awesome conversation, and it's one of those where, you know, I feel like, oh, this is somebody that I could hang out with too, you know? So, and I hope maybe one day I get to see him perform. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Angel Luna. So Angel, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So I like to start with asking my guests how they remember alcohol coming into their life, not necessarily your first drunk, but maybe even, did you grow up with it? Was it something in childhood that you remember? Like, what is your earliest memory of alcohol in your life?
When it's weird. It's always been in my life. Not in like I've been a drunk since I was 2 years old, but in a like I'm Hispanic, I'm Mexican, and so it's in the culture. So as a kid, you're essentially trained to be like, hey, go get me a beer, and then like you as a 5-year-old already can challenge like German beer mates with the amount of drinks you can hold at once and bringing them over to a bunch of adults. So yeah, when I think of booze, I just think of like cookouts and barbecues when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, not in a negative way, not in like, and then there was beer bottles. No, it was just like, people drink at cookouts.
Yeah.
So
It's a very normal thing. Sure. So when did you first find it as something when did you first find it yourself?
well, at this point, I knew where the beer was. I was like 5, so I didn't have to be reminded all the time, which is why I was always the dozen. I'm just kidding. Probably high school.
Yeah.
Just like most people,
Yeah.
Yeah, have some beers. Oh, okay. And then, just drink whenever you can. I wasn't like a partier or anything in high school, but if there was booze around or whatever, I drank it.
House
Everybody,
parties at the park, that kind of stuff.
yeah, like it's a weird thing because like we all just kind of lie to ourselves, like, oh yeah, this tastes like piss. It's amazing.
Yeah,
But
it
you're in
didn't
it to be
taste
so
great.
cool. No. Yeah. And then like as I got older in high school, we had, you have parties or you hang out and you have like hard liquor. And that stuff actually tastes decent versus, warm piss.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so drinking in high school, like every normal average kid
Yeah, and it wasn't even a lot. It
does.
was just like, oh, rad. Okay, we're doing this tonight. Let's go. It's weird. I never got drunk in high school. I didn't start getting drunk until like I got to college and older.
And then what changed there? Was it just the acceleration of the amount, or that you needed or wanted, or?
Yeah, I mean it's just the natural progression, right? Like
Mhm.
during college, and for me specifically, I'd gotten a full ride to college and like imposter syndrome hits, and then you're alone with your thoughts for the first time.
Yeah.
And you're just like, ugh. And like, there's the access to booze is way easier to get. So
Right.
you start drinking a lot. And like not in a negative way, you just drink a lot more. And I remember drinking a lot my freshman year of college. and then I ended up dropping out beginning of sophomore year, and then the booze intake increased after that. So it was all like trauma induced, and and yeah. So
What trauma induced it?
just freaking, like I said, imposter syndrome, not
Yeah.
knowing what you want,
Okay.
genetically this genetic disposition to drink a lot,
Yeah.
and yeah, and just like, your childhood bullshit that you go to therapy for, and so on and so forth. I didn't start
Yes.
going to therapy till like 22, and at that point, arguably, it's like, I'm doing the work, but also like I'm horribly self-medicating.
Right. Yeah. I had a friend who had gone to therapy, and the therapist wouldn't take his money because the therapist said, "Look, I can help you, but I can only help you if you quit drinking."
Right.
And he wasn't willing to do that. But
Right.
so you begin to drink heavily in your sophomore year. You said you dropped out in sophomore year of
Yeah.
college.
Mm-hmm.
And what predicated that?
I just imposter syndrome and like depression. Like I
Yeah.
really started getting really depressed, and it wasn't until like going to the doctor a few times. So like, yeah, you were predisposition based on like the everything to be depressed. I'm like,
Got it.
huh. So yeah, I have clinical depression, something I deal with on the often, something I, you know, to this day have to deal with. Um, and just, that plus just not having my grades right, not even knowing what I wanted to do. I was there to get an English and a communications degree, to maybe be a debate coach. I'd gotten a like little baby scholarship to do debate.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was not, we'll say, the greatest person. Not saying I'm great now, but like, when you're a young guy who at the time I'd been like on my own, for lack of a better term, since 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you very disposed to shitty opinions,
Sure.
right? And so, you're a little edge lord when you get to college. And I, and I was just like a little edge lord. I think if I'd stayed that way or kept drinking, I definitely could see myself being like, I would have definitely been in like the throes of all the fucked uppery that's happening nowadays in
Mm-hmm.
regards to like men's mental health. I'd probably be listening to the wrong talking heads. If you catch what
Yes, I
what I'm
do. I
saying,
do. I do.
you
And it's,
know,
well,
and
yeah,
ironically, I did listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. So like, it
you know
is what it
what?
is.
I
And I'm
did
glad I'm
too.
not that person. So
And yeah. And then something around 2014, I was like, this is kind of stupid. I don't like any of the, you know what I mean? Like something
yeah,
shifted, and I was like, oh, okay. Either I can continue down this, like you said, and that whole like idea of being an edgelord, and those people are really not that much fun to be around.
they're really not. And
You
like
know?
it's this weird thing that a lot of people have. I think from what I've seen, what I've experienced is we try really hard to be accepted by people that we don't even like,
Mm,
and that's all it was. Like even
yeah.
after I left school and I found, stand up, and I found myself like laughing and making the type of jokes that I would not make, but I just want to be liked by this group of people because I want to be accepted. And it's
Right.
like, and then when I moved to Chicago, I'm like, I'm still that person. I'm still making those jokes, and like no one likes me. And I'm like, I don't know why people don't like me. And it's like, oh yeah, because people are different here, and most of them are nice. Like,
Right. Yeah. I
and just
mean,
like a
it's
whole
just
thing. But
it,
yeah,
it definitely it's not a sustainable way of thinking, a way of life, a way of communicating in
it's
in
not.
that sort of
It's not.
horribly cynical and downright nasty
which is
perspective.
wild because like when you see that stuff and you see like the people that are like in the precipice of that and the people around that, you're like, I've seen the people like and I'm not gonna name names, but the people who are friends or that are like in that satellite group of that main shitty person, um like if you watch their stuff separately or when it's just them, you're like, this is a completely different person.
Yeah.
Like the code switch is hard. Like like this person's like nice, they're open, they're sensitive, and then the moment they get around they're like bros, they change so dramatically. And like it's a normal thing to be like, when you're with your friends you're like somebody else, but it's like, man, how do you go from like this cool guy to like really shitty out of nowhere?
Yeah.
So I don't know, we'll see,
The
but
desire to be accepted is pretty powerful.
it's pretty powerful, which leads me to my drinking years. No.
Yes. So the heavy drinking in after you've dropped out of college, dealing with depression, um, and this continues. You said you were drinking more. I mean, how was it then?
I mean, I was just drinking a lot in terms of like, you get home after work, you open a few brewskis, and then that turns into like, okay, I'm gonna open the bottle of Jack, into the bottle of this, into it
Yeah.
gets worse. And the main thing that caused me to drink a lot is I was in a long-term relationship at the time, and I was the fucking worst. Just I was a really bad partner. Um, it's the more I look at it, like as the older as I get, I'm like, Jesus Christ, how was I so awful? Um, and and at the time I was like, well, this is how you do relationships because this is what I see. My parents have been married for so long, and this is how I saw it happen. So why wouldn't it work for me? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
The classic, I learned it from seeing you. But your first idea of what a relationship is your parents, is your family.
Sure.
And my dad's not the best person. He's a terrible person, arguably. Um and yeah, he treated my mom like shit. And so I in turn treated my partner like shit. Not on purpose. I wasn't like doing it like in an evil Machiavellian way. I just thought that's what it was. I thought that's what love was. I thought that's what it was to be a partner. And I was just bad at it. I was real bad at it. And I remember they broke up with me. We were supposed to just hang out. And the big issue was I'm not vulnerable enough because I kept to myself a lot. And like I need to be more open so we can, and the reason she wanted me to be open is so we can discuss the fucking issues we're having. And then she got tired of it and she called me out on everything, like everything at once. And at that moment I could have been super manipulative, super shitty, but I was going to therapy, and like the timing was like freaking magical somehow, because I remember the therapy was like, you need to learn how to take constructive criticism and like accept that you mess up, and that's okay, and you just gotta like. She was basically like, take my therapist at the time was a woman. She was like, take it on the chin, and then go from there. That's the only way you're gonna figure this out, apparently, because you're so hard headed. Um, and I was like, okay, and so cut to 3 days later, my partner breaks up with me and does the same thing, and I'll go, and I just remember breaking down crying. I was like, holy shit, you're right, because like she had receipts, like boom, boom, like hired a lawyer, like the works.
Damn.
And she was absolutely right about all of it. Not once was I like, well, actually, and I was just like, oh fuck, right? And I think at one point I was like, I thought this, and she's like, no, that's bullshit because this and this, and I was like, oh man, she knows what she's doing. She's good. She came at a debater with like debate rhetoric. It's a good time. Smart.
So this was a moment of I guess you could say a moment of clarity, or a moment of change, at least in your thinking, to accepting the criticism rather than deflecting it.
Yes.
because of the therapy that you had
Mm-hmm.
undergone?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Nailed it.
Did
The problem is once we broke
yes.
up, I did not know what to do with it. Instead of being like, let's work on this, I was just like, well, I guess I'm a piece of shit. And then yeah, instead of just being like, I guess this is just who I am, just a
Yeah.
real sack of shit. And then all the internal hate comes in, and then you start drinking a whole lot more. And what's crazy is like that was such a big time of change for me because
Mhm.
I had just started like doing really well. Well, not really well, but like well relatively in terms of like stand up. Um I had just gotten a new job. And so like I'm going into this job, like brand new everything, essentially. And it was a lot. And I really like that job. I love that job. But you have a problem when you go to a job you like and you're pre-gaming.
Mm.
It's one thing to like, God, I fucking hate this job. And then like you're, taking shots back just to get through the terrible job, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. It's another where you're like, oh man, today I get to play video games all day and hang out with people. It's
It
just
reminds me of there's a Doug Stanhope bit, and he's like, "Don't drink on your weekends. That's your time. Drink during the week, during while you're at your shitty job. Like,
yeah.
don't give them 100%. Save that for yourself on the weekends."
uh that's not wrong. Not
Yeah, but so did you, in this job that you loved and you're pre-gaming, did it occur to you that alcohol was the problem at that point?
um no,
Yeah.
no. That's the weird thing. I always blamed myself, never like the thing that I was doing, or like it was always like, well, it's my fault, obviously. You know, it's not alcohol's fault, it's my fault, right? Alcohol's my friend.
Hmm.
It's trying to make me feel better. I'm the one who's
Right.
messing everything up. And then I did the work. I did therapy, and there's two events that like really shaped. Like one, they were like 6 months apart. About 2-3 weeks maybe into the new job, I get a call that I need to go visit my ex partner. They had um, been through some stuff, and they were at a medical facility, and I went to go see them. And like in this weird Zen moment, they were
Mhm.
like, "Hey, I just need you to know that you need to forgive yourself." I was like, "What?" I'm like, the reason you're here is like my fault. And they're like, yeah, but also like I'm taking responsibility for my part in it. You need to take responsibility for your part in it. And I go, that's what I'm doing. It's like, yeah, no, you don't understand. Like, you need to learn how to like. They're in the medical facility. I am visiting them, and they're like still like in this incredible sense of mind to be like, don't be so hard on yourself, right? Which is incredible. And so that's one thing that happened, and that shook me. And then like a few months later, you're drunk, you give a phone call. Oh, one day we'll be back together, blah blah blah. It's like, no, 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 we won't, because you're a narcissist and you're this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, and like instead of like fighting back, I was like, you're right. It's like, yeah, but it's like that BoJack Horseman scene where it's like, no, you got to be better. You can't just walk around saying you're a piece of shit and then never do anything about it. Like you need to. It was essentially that conversation. And I was like, okay. And then like it still was like a month after that where I did a show. It was like one of the biggest shows I'd done. I did a really good set. They recorded it. Um I hung out with like coworkers after, like, oh, that was a good set. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. And I looked back on it and they were just being nice. I was a fucking drunk mess. Like barely this, like the punchlines were there, they got laughs, but like
Mhm.
Like it didn't make any sense. I'm like, what the fuck was this? And then I was like, okay, well, this is weird. And instead of like, maybe I should self-reflect, I just got more drunk. And then that morning I had to go to work, and I like look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm a mess. And like I looked like my dad. I had shaved my head recently and my dad's bald.
Yeah.
And I looked at my dad and I was like, oh no. Oh God. And yeah, that was it. And then I got rid of the booze and cold turkey did essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by myself. I tried AA once and I didn't like it. I
What
like
didn't you like about it? What was
the
the
religious part.
yeah.
Yeah, I have my issues with religion. And yeah, and then I just like, no, fuck this. I don't need this shit. I'll do it by myself because I'm me. And like it worked for a
Yeah.
long time until like the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And then I started going on and off to AA, and it's been great. I haven't been in a bit, but that's mostly because poor time management. And to be honest, just like um I don't want to come into an AA meeting with like, guess what? I really want to drink today. Like I, for some reason in my mind, I'm like, that's the last thing people want to hear at AA. So
Well,
yeah, yeah, that's the TLDR of it.
yeah.
Which is not very TLDR.
No, it is not. Well, a couple of things.
Go for
What
it.
tell me you have this epiphany about your father, which I have had a few about mine,
Right.
in a very similar way. Like, my God, what have I become? But you say you cold turkeyed it,
Mhm.
and that I had a similar experience. What was that like, and how did you cold turkey it? What were the actual steps and things that you did to keep yourself away from booze?
I asked for help. So so when you're in stand up, you make friends, and with your friends you drink. Super normal thing.
Yeah.
And so I'd start going to mics and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, you want something?" I'm like, "No, man, I'm not drinking anymore." And luckily, I was around people that weren't shitty about it.
Yeah.
I definitely lucked out in my environment. So I'm like, "Hey, I don't drink anymore." And they'd be like, oh, "Okay, cool. Do you want like a soda?" And you're like, "Yeah." I mean, that was super helpful because I would, you'd confront people sometimes. I'm sure you've dealt with this where they're like, "You want something to drink?" Like, "No, man, I'll just have a water or a soda." Then like, you don't drink? Why don't you drink? Because I don't drink. You're in the program, and then you're like, "Yeah, actually, I am in the program."
You want to talk
And they're
about
like, "Oh,
it? Yeah.
well, you know what the worst part is? Something, and this is just a little side thing.
Hmm.
The worst, and like it shouldn't be, because naturally the thing to be is like, yes, I'll help you out. Is you go like, actually, I'm sober, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm in AA, and then they go, maybe I should be in AA, and it's like, ooh, they're joking, but they're telling some truth here.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I mean, I know a meeting if you want to go. And they're like, nah, I mean, I don't drink that much. I was like, how bad did you drink? And then you tell them how bad you drunk. And then they're like, I mean, I drink more than that. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell you. And then
Yeah.
maybe, and like, it's this narcissist. I know what you're trying to do. And like, yes, I want to help you, but you're being narcissistic about it. You're
Yeah.
not there. You're not asking me because you generally think you have a problem. You're asking it out of like this weird narcissistic thing to make yourself the focus of the conversation,
Mhm.
which is naturally the most alcoholic thing you could do.
Yes.
And part of me is like, I want to help you, but the other
Hmm.
part of me is like, dude, I can barely help myself. Just, here's resources, Godspeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, And it's that conversations, it shouldn't be annoying, but it is. I'm probably a bad person for it, but
I
I'll take
usually
that.
say,
I'll
yeah, go
take
ahead.
that L this time around, just because, like, God, I'm not a fan of it. And it's like,
No.
dude, just take your fucking drink and go.
Yeah. I
Like,
don't.
we don't have to have this mini 3-minute conversation where you feel weird about how you're drinking because you're gonna go have your sip of whatever and feel bad about it anyway. So who gives a shit?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually just tell them like, hey, so I know this meeting Sunday morning. You give me your address. I can come by your house and I'll pick you up at 9:30 and we'll go hit this 10 o'clock meeting if you're serious. And usually at that point, they're like, oh, never mind. I gotta go. Bye. And then they
Smart.
disappear from my life. But you're right. It's just like, okay, I get it. You want to make a joke about it. Fine. But it's you're not serious. It's just not an interesting conversation to have.
Exactly.
Because if you sincerely wanted help, I would go out of my way. It wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even be going out of my way. I would be
No,
happy
no,
to
not at
help
all.
you.
Yeah. There's
Right?
been few people that have been like, here's the resources, do this. You
Yeah.
don't even have to go anywhere. Just you can do it from your home, be whatever. And they'll go
Yeah.
maybe to one or two, and like, but then they'll find their own meeting, and like, life's great. And you're like, great, awesome, hell yeah. And sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't stick, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
As long as you do the effort at one point, it's all that matters.
So you had a great like you said, a great community to quit drinking in. People were not pressuring you, anything like that. What was the point? How long were you cold turkeying it before you thought, hey, I need a little bit more help? And what
Mm.
was in that moment that made you say that? Was there a breaking point or a concern of relapse?
Um, what's weird is that urge to like not be my parent was really strong. Like it fucking I ran on coffee and the need to not be that guy.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, I had recently been let go. I was let go on Valentine's Day. Can you believe that shit?
Mm,
I was let go on Valentine's Day and my date canceled. And I was just like, this is the worst day ever, but okay. And that same weekend, I had booked a bunch of jobs because I don't know if Whitney told you, but I do magic. I'm a magician, and and I had like solid like little bookings for comedy. So like throughout the week, I was booked for comedy, making $20 here and there, and then I for the weekend I'd do like a wedding, and I'd be set for like the next 2 months. And I had bookings like that for like the next 3 months, and I was like, dude, I just need to nail these bookings, and I'm
yeah.
set for like the year. And then the pandemic hits, all of it dried up, all of it. And mind you, I had already gotten some advances,
Mm,
and I had to like send those back, and I owed people money now because like I had spent the advance on like rent and shit. And it was a whole thing. So cut to it's now like mid-March. I have no money. And like I have some money coming in, but not a lot. I'm trying to get my shit together to get an employment proper, and it was that whole mess of like people trying to get money.
yeah.
And the government's like not good at it. And so and there's only been a few times where I've seriously regretted a decision, and they both occurred out of fear. Um, like I was scared, and instead of like pushing through and like being brave about it, I pussied out, for lack of a better term. Apologies if that's an offensive way to say that. But yeah, I chickened out, I guess. And at the time, my entire family was calling me because I was the only one in Chicago. Um, I'd been there for like 5 years, loved it, did not plan on moving back to Texas at all, ever. I was just like, this is my town. I don't even care if I make it. Like,
Hmm.
I'm set. This is where I want to live. Even if I do make it, this is going to be home base, whatever making it means. And everybody called me. They were like, "We're so scared. Please come home. Please, we're scared for you. Please come home. We're scared for you. Please come home." I had like no money, and I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna fucking figure it out." Because I mean, I'd been homeless at one point in Texas. I'd been through it in Texas, and you know, once you've been in like the worst of it, you're kind of not scared of it anymore. So I was like, I'll be fine. But they just got in my head at a very vulnerable time, and I was like, I have no job prospects. Like, I have nothing going on. I'm fucked. Um, and so I gave in, and I was promised. I was sold bad goods. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll move in here. We got a job for you. We got you. You're going to be sad. You're going to live in the city. And then I ended up moving in with my parents. They told me like this terrible plan to move me in somewhere. And they were like, and the job we got you is working with us in the sun. And I was like, okay. And so I lived with my parents for like 6 months. It was awful. Had to live with my dad, which at first wasn't too bad, but it's one of those things where like they were clearly both of them on their best behavior when I first got there, and they just got progressively worse. And the bummer is, my family either still doesn't, or they think I'm over exaggerating when I say I'm sober, because they didn't see it. They never had to deal with it because I was away the whole time, like in the middle of like all my bullshit. They were not there at all. So they didn't see the worst version of me. They hadn't seen me really regularly since 16. And so it's like over a decade after. And then I'm over here like a different person, very different politics, just different everything. Like went to therapy, like, just a more emotionally mature person. And my mom used to tell me all the time, she's like, I don't know how to talk to you. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're my son, but like also like and I was just like, I'm an adult. Talk to me like I'm an adult. Like, yes, I'm your little boy, but also I'm a grown ass man. You could tell me things, it's fine. And yeah, and so like my dad drank a lot. And like ironically, you'd think that would be the motivator to not drink. But when that shit's around you all the time, you kind of want to drink.
Yeah.
And so I lucked out in eventually finding a gig in the city. I'm in Houston now. And was where I was born and raised. And I moved in with my brother. I've since moved again, but just living with my brother, I was like, okay, I need to get my shit together, like, because the urge to drink is alive and well.
Yeah.
And so then I went to AA through Whitney, and Whitney's great. And Whitney Watson, Sober Rabbit, check it out.
Yes.
And in fact, I love Sober Rabbit so much. Here, I'll show you this. I don't know if it'll pick up. I
Look
have
at
many a
that.
tattoo. I have a Sober Rabbit tattoo on my arm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that comic so much.
It's
My
great.
right arm is the arm of things I love, and Sober Rabbit is one of them. So.
What's the left arm?
This is that's a good question. This is like who I am, for lack of a better term. So I have the Mexican flag eagle on here, and I have this I can't really show it, but I have like Elsa, the Bride of Frankenstein, but in the form of like a saint. Because I really love old classic Universal monster movies, and I feel deep kindredship with those monsters and horror and stuff like that. So
awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, and then I started doing that, and it's really helped since. So yeah.
All right.
That's the very too long version of that.
So AA in Houston.
I don't even do AA in Houston.
No, you didn't.
I do it online.
Yeah. No, but when you did, is that correct? Is that when you were living with your brother, and you said the urge to drink was very alive?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was very strong. Yeah,
yeah. And this was, what year was this?
Last year.
This is last year. Okay. Okay. And you live in Houston now?
I still live in Houston. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and AA helped you through that, got you past the urge. You said you go here and again, but it's more of a resource than necessarily a way of life for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's definitely a resource. Yeah, like ever since getting sober and trying to figure my shit out, I've gone to therapy, I've looked inward, I've done a lot of the work, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
into just becoming a better person and knowing what causes my issues and my triggers and so on and so forth. And yeah, and like, it's funny because I chose a life when I figured out who I wanted to be and who I am. I chose a life of like hardship, right? Because I'm an artist. I want to entertain. I want to do magic. I want to tell jokes. I'm trying to play music with a band. Like the works. Like
Yeah.
I have a podcast that I write feverishly on, and I'm trying to like, I'm trying to quote unquote make it, and I was doing it for a while, and the pandemic hit, and it really fucked my shit up. And when you look at my friends and the people that are around me on paper, I'm the worst one. Like doing because everybody like I'm living with my cousin now, and like in his house, like everybody, for lack of a better term, everybody has their shit together. Like they have money, they don't worry about, they have savings accounts, the works, right? And I don't have that. I don't have security in that sense. What I do have though is what I think I have, and I may be wrong, but I'm very secure in myself, what I want to do, what I believe in, and more specifically, like I just feel like I have an emotional maturity that like a lot of these folks don't have. And mind you, they're they've also done work, right? Like, they're like, hey, these are cycles we should probably break, and they do it, and that's awesome. But there's peaking of like, you could have handled that better.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And but mind you, I say that in my classic alcoholic narcissistic way of like, well, I have this at least. And it's like, do you?
Well, I think you make a very good point, and it's something um, that in this last 6 months for myself, even
Mhm.
I've dealt with. Back in January, late January, I made a decision that I was going to follow a path to financial security. I was just going to forget about everything else that I was trying to do. I was going to ignore I was still going to do some of the creative stuff, but it was not going to be a focal point. And I had this plan, and I was going to do it, and I was going to follow it. And then somebody came into my life, and I was talking with her, and she's an artist, and she is somebody who said, I choose things out of integrity. I'd rather be kind than rich. And all of these little things that she would talk about, and saying, if it doesn't align with my values, I'm not going to do it. Money comes and goes. And she would say all these little things to me. And it started to occur to me that I really didn't want to do this thing that I was like, I'm going to go make 6 figures. That's money is going to be my motivator, and I'm going to go live a happy life in paradise. And it became apparent very quickly that I was not going to be happy doing that, and that wasn't going to be the most important thing. And I don't always, we can't always align with our values and do everything. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do to get the money we need to live, right? But that being said, it sort of changed my perspective. And so maybe it's not, maybe it is a little bit narcissistic. Maybe all this is narcissistic. I don't know. We've got microphones in front of us. So,
Yeah.
but
We're like, listen to our problems.
but it has really helped me to deal with those hardships that are in front of me when I go, no, there is a purpose and a reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now instead of the other thing that I thought was going to might have made me comfortable, but would not have made me entirely happy. So
Right.
I think
No,
it's
I
important.
100% agree because I'm in the middle of a job hunt that's been going on for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not easy. And I'm getting to a point where it's like, I guess I'll just never find this magical job that's gonna let me do whatever I want. And it's like, did you even have a job that let you do whatever you wanted beforehand? No. You were on that struggle bus way before this. And so
Hmm.
now I'm like, if I just get a job in Chicago, I'll just take the job, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. Even if it doesn't pay great, I'll figure it out. I've done it before. Like I went from like, I'm gonna move back with the most money and blah blah blah, and now I'm just like, I just want to move back. I just,
Yeah.
you know, and it's weird because like I think, I mean, I'm definitely chasing something that doesn't exist anymore.
What's
I'm
that?
chasing, I'm chasing that like angel of the fucking 3 years ago almost of like in Chicago, broke as hell, but didn't care, had all his friends and, did magic and stand up and life was awesome. And was the healthiest city ever. I'm chasing that angel, but that Chicago, that those people, half of them left, they've moved on. It's not the same place, you know. But I think, and so I know I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to be in this place that I left so long ago because I knew that it's filled with the things that don't make me happy. It's filled with people that I don't agree with. And I know I don't want to be here. And like if there was a way I can get my friends, just ship them in a box and take them with me, I would. But and I have cool friends that like that that know that. They know that this isn't home and it hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're very supportive of that. And they're like, "Yeah, man, I can't wait for you to leave." In the best way possible, right? They're like,
Right. Yeah.
he's like, "God, when are you gonna leave?" And I'm like, "I'm working on it." Like, I hope you get there. Like, it's a fun bit we do because like they'll say it in front of their partners,
Hmm.
like as a joke.
Yeah.
They're like, "Can't wait for this fucking guy to leave," and I'm like, "Me too, baby." And then we'll high five, and they're like, "What the hell
Hmm.
is happening?" But
Yeah, man. I mean, it's great to have people that understand that, even if it's not, because it's not selfish. It's not about, oh, wait, this is not going to last forever. I think about all of the groups of friends and even my close friends that are now all far away. In,
mhm,
if I'm in California and they're in Arizona and Washington and Arkansas and wherever else, that was never going to last forever. And we all had our own thing that we had to do.
yeah,
And that was far more important than partying and drinking and sleeping
yeah,
on the couch and
and it's really cool because like I was away for so long, and they've always been the boys, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
all guys, right? They're the
Yeah.
boys, and it's they're super supportive of everything. In the sense of like, um, hey, I don't drink. Okay, cool. Or they'll make sure there's no booze around me, and they'll be like, hey, we're gonna drink. Is that okay? I was like, dude, I don't care. It's fine. Or like if somebody offers drinks, they're the first ones to be like, no, 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 no. My angel doesn't drink. Cool. Or like, let's say this happened once. We went to a restaurant and we'd gotten this shrimp cocktail thing, and like it was a bad cocktail. It was bad shrimp cocktail. Just putting that. I'm sorry, restaurant.
Yes.
Not that you're ever watching this. Um, uh, and my buddy had a sip and a bite of the shrimp first, and he goes, "Don't eat this." And I go, "Why?" He's like, "Just don't eat it. Hang on." And he called the waiter. He's like, "Does this have alcohol in it?" And they're like, "No." And it's like, "Are you sure?" It tastes like it has alcohol in it. And the waiter tastes like, "Oh, damn, this is weird." And then they go and they're like, "It doesn't. It's just it has uh like a mixer in it." And it was like, huh. And like my buddy looked out for me in that
Yeah.
in that sense. And I God, whew, my heart. Like, that's amazing. It's always fun. But
That's
yeah,
huge.
it's just one of those things where it's like that's that's the real OG right there.
Yeah, it
That's the
it
homie.
makes it makes a lot of difference because
It
it's
does.
it's nobody we don't I didn't do this on my own, and I haven't met anybody who's done it on their own yet.
Hmm.
So those kinds of things are hugely important to the recovery process, to the just staying sober, and having people who appreciate you and love you and are willing to stand up for you in general, outside of the the alcohol.
Hmm.
So um I and so how many years do you have now?
It's been 8,000 years. Let me double check here because I always get the number wrong. 5 years, 8 months, 27 days as of this recording.
Oh well, all right, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's no, I mean, that's no easy feat, and that's no small number either.
No, no, it's not. Um, real quick friend story.
Yeah.
Last year we're hanging out and we're just hanging out, right? And then I had made a post on Instagram like, "Hey, I made it 5 years. Holy shit!" And I don't bring sobriety up when I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm not like, "Guys, guess what I did?" Because one, I don't really believe in bragging that much, unless it's like a big milestone. It's like, "Hey, I made another year. Hell yeah!" Right?
Hmm.
Even then, I don't make it a big thing.
Yeah.
Um, and my buddy was like, "Hey, I saw your post earlier, 2 days ago." It's like, "Which one?" They're like, "5 years." I was like, "Yeah, yeah." It's like, "Damn, that's big." I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." They're like, "Nah, dude, that shit's hard." I'm like, "Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm not, you know, I don't try to make it a big thing because I don't want my sobriety to be my entire personality,"
Yeah.
said the guy who's on a sobriety podcast.
Yes.
And so, um, and he's like, "All right, that's what's up, man." He's like, "Cool." I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "Okay, that was cool." And then like a week later, he pops up. He's at my house where I was living unannounced. He's like, "Hey, dog." He's like, "Hey, what you doing here?" He's like, "Oh, just can you drop this off?" I was like, "Okay, cool." So is this for you? I was like, "Okay, cool. I gotta go to work." I was like, "All right, man. Well, good seeing you. Love you. Bye." And I opened it and it was like this really heartfelt note. And it was about like how proud he was of me, how hard it is, and how he felt bad because we're best friends, but he never knew I had this big of a problem, and that he wasn't there to help me out. And at the time, we were all in school and shit, and so like we weren't talking as much, but like once a year we'd be like, "The boys are back," right? So
Yeah.
and like and then had a Hot Wheels because he knows I like Hot Wheels, and it had a 5 year sobriety trip. He went out of his way to find a 5 year sobriety trip
That's
and give
awesome.
it to me, which I think is cool. And
It's
so like
awesome.
that's the best story ever. I love that
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Forever.
It also, you're right, it doesn't have to be your entire personality, and your entire friend group doesn't have to be sober and or in recovery. And it's such an amazing thing to have people who also, they just don't have this problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking again with somebody, and they were saying about how this person doesn't drink, and but they just kind of quit drinking and they picked up something else, and I was like, oh, so they don't have the problem. Okay, got it, understood.
Yeah.
But and it's even better to have those people in your life that understand you as a human being, because a lot of this is just human issues, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
all just alcohol. Like you said, gosh, it's tough to stay sober for 5 years. And I think to myself, when you said that, it would be a lot hard. All of the problems that I'm dealing with right now, all of the hardships, all of those things that I'm trying to, create and cultivate. And like you said, I'm trying to make it. How much harder would those be if I was still drinking? They would be
Right?
impossible.
Amen. In my mind, I'm like, I don't think I would be nearly as far. I'm 100% convinced that if I'd kept drinking, I'd probably be like a bum. Not in like the rude way of describing someone who doesn't have a home, uh, or homeless. Because I've been homeless. um, but but in terms of like just the worst version of myself, I think I would have sunk back into being shitty, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
being shitty, having shitty opinions, just not having, just blaming the world for my problems, as opposed to looking inward, right? Or like not recognizing, the privileges and things that I have, as opposed to being like, okay, this is more than that. I need to, the common denominator in all my problems is me,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something that a lot of people don't recognize in general.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm a big believer in like, it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility, right? So like, it is not my fault that I grew up in not the best environment. It's not my fault that my brain isn't wired properly. It is not my fault that, these are things are not my fault. And and I get leeway for that. But at the same time, it is my responsibility to work on it, at least. Not saying to fix it, just attempt to work on it. Because all you can ask for somebody is to try. Anytime I help somebody with the smallest to the biggest thing, I always say, hey, all you can ask somebody is to try. That's all you can do. Right. Because have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Not yet. Not
Okay,
yet.
watch it. I'm gonna
Okay.
throw a quote at you, and it's not
Please.
really a spoiler,
Okay.
but the character Raymond at one point says, and like a bunch of crazy shit's happening. The character Raymond says like, "Hey, none of us know what we're doing. We're all scared. So the best thing we can do is to be kind." And like, it's mind blowing. I was like, "Oh man, he's right." And so that's what I try to do. And like from not just from then, but like from always, like the only reason I'm as far along as I am is because people were kind. And like the old version of me would just take advantage of that. And I have, and I'm not proud of it. But the old version of me took advantage of people and their kindness. And now this version of me is very grateful for it. And very like trying to whatever little thing I can do to try to make it even, I can. And the
Yeah.
best part is like really kind people don't ask for it back. They're just like, no, dude, don't worry about it.
I didn't, and honestly, I didn't do
It's
it
not
for you. I did it to just be
yeah,
kind.
yeah. And so like, that's what I do. And like, it's just, yeah, you just do it because you're supposed to do that. And my buddy, one of my best friends out here, I go, you're a nice guy. He's like, I'm not a nice guy. I was like, yeah, you are. He's like, you did this for me and this for me. He's like, yeah, you're supposed to do that. It's not me being kind. It's just me being a person. And I'm like, humbleness to the
Yeah.
100th degree of like,
Yeah.
this dude's like, it's not me being nice. That's just me being that's what you're supposed to do. And it's like, shout out to that guy. And like,
That's,
I just hope that I can send that out in one way or another. Um, yeah. And
I think
I
about
would not
being,
do that if I was still drinking. Straight up.
oh, shit. You bring up another good point about just being kind to people, and that it's not a, yeah, it's not always well received. And I don't, even if I am kind and somebody is cruel back to me, I always think, well, I don't have to go home with that person. I don't have to live with that person. They have to go live with them being a miserable prick. And I can walk away with having been kind, regardless of the circumstance.
Right.
And that's more important than winning in the situation, the argument, the whatever it is. And it really just helps me make the next better decision. Or as Mark Maron put it, I just make better mistakes. So
yeah.
but But you have, there's a couple of things you wanted to plug. We want to talk about, is it the stand-up? And I also am interested in this podcast you have.
Oh yeah. I started out as a stand-up. Um, I'll do it like online every once in a while. I haven't been on a stage since like last year. But right now my main focus is my podcast, Death and Friends. Yeah, I co-host it with my buddy Nash Flynn. And it is a podcast about the history of death, the ways we get buried, the ways we get remembered. And yeah, basically we look at like historical events that relate to death and how impactful it is to like us as human beings and in society. And when does this air?
We will, I will, what is today? Today's Monday. I'm gonna bang it out and have it ready for by Friday.
Okay, great. So we're in the middle of our third season.
Okay.
And we're getting towards the end there. We're about halfway through, I should say. We're about halfway through our third season. And it's a good time. Listen to it. It's like the longest episode's like 45 minutes.
Okay.
It's just us being goofballs. The thing, so Nash, my co-host, she actually has a degree in death ways. So like she's educated in the science of like how it is to die socially, culturally, which is like insanely interesting. She has a degree in it, and I like to say, and I am also there.
Right.
Yeah, and it's my baby. I love that show so much, and I work so hard on it. We work so hard on it. And it's yeah. So if you like things like true crime and death and like just some occult stuff, if you're just like into the spookier things in life and you like to learn about history, definitely listen to Death and Friends. It's available everywhere you listen to podcasts. And yeah, check it out.
That's awesome, man. Angel, thank you so much for doing this. It was really great to get to know you a little bit and talk with you. And I wish you all the best of luck getting back to Chicago, where you belong.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.
Yes.
I am but just a guy, and you said I need to talk to that guy, and I appreciate you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it is. There's a bunch of us who are just people trying to make it a little bit better today than it was yesterday. And, hopefully, I mean, you made it better for me today. So I appreciate that.
Man.
Thank you
so much. Hey, you made it better for me. I like to say I've been listening. I listened to some episodes to prepare. You're a great interviewer. Like you're really good at making things flow, and you know when to be like, and how did this? And it's like, my man's. So you did great.
Thank you.
For sure.
I just sort of, I kind of just try to shepherd the conversation in a way that is interesting, to me, as much as it would be to anybody else. But what are the things that I want to know? Like, how did you do that? And mostly it's like, shit, that's what I should have been doing. Oh man. Okay. So yeah,
it'd be like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right,
stay spooky, buddy.
I'll talk to you later.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.